There is a quiet terror that lies just beneath the surface of everyday life, a suspicion that the ordinary rhythms of existence, the waking and the sleeping, the striving and the failing, the birth and the death, might not be as simple, not as free as we have been taught to believe. For thousands of years, across civilizations that rose and fell like tides, whispers have persisted that the soul, that most intimate and eternal aspect of our being, is not as unbound as we imagine. Instead, it has been caught, tethered to a cycle it did not consciously choose, pulled back into the currents of mortality again and again. This is the essence of what many call the soul trap, a cycle of recycling, an unseen mechanism by which consciousness is lured back into incarnation, bound by illusions it cannot fully perceive, until the great machinery of this world has extracted what it wishes before casting the soul once more into the wheel of return. To speak of the soul trap is to stand before a hidden architecture of reality, one that exists behind the soft veil of what we call life. Most are content to accept life as it is presented, a sequence of random events, punctuated by fleeting joys and inevitable sorrows, all culminating in a death that is either final or followed by some vague promise of paradise. But what if neither of these assumptions is true? What if, instead, death is but another room in a long corridor, and at its end stands not a doorway into liberation, but a carefully crafted mirage designed to lure you back into another body, another life, another set of struggles you have remember and have forget? What if you are not living for the first time, nor even the 10th, but the 100th, the 1000th, endlessly recycled through the labyrinth of existence, your amnesia, upon birth the most cunning prison of all? This is not a new suspicion. Mystics, shamans, and visionaries from different corners of the world have spoken in hushed tones of the wheel of rebirth, of samsara, of the endless turning of souls caught in nets, spun by forces they barely comprehend. Some framed it as a divine test, others as a necessary purification, and still others as a kind of cosmic slavery, where beings unseen feed upon the emotions, fears, and energies of incarnated humans. The metaphors differ, but the common thread remains. Life is not entirely yours, and your soul may not be entirely free. The phrase soul trap stirs both fascination and unease, for it suggests agency not just within us, but beyond us, or systems that weave the rules of our return. Perhaps they are gods cloaked in light, promising reunion and salvation. Perhaps they are architects of illusion, skilled in the art of deception, presenting us with visions of long-lost loved ones and radiant afterlife landscapes, all designed to coax consent from the weary spirit. We are told, step into the light, and you will be at peace. Yet, how often do the greatest predators disguise themselves as saviors? How often does the sweetest fruit conceal a bitter core? To explore the soul trap is not to wallow in despair, but to peel back the layers of a story we have inherited without question. It is to examine whether the cycle of reincarnation is a gift of growth or a snare of entrapment. For if we are recycled endlessly, what purpose does it serve, and who profits from it? If we are indeed eternal consciousness, why should we be bound to return at all, especially with no memory of the lessons we supposedly came to learn? The forgetting itself is the strangest feature of all, for what growth can truly occur if each round begins with the slate wiped clean? Imagine a student forced to repeat the same exam over and over, but compelled to forget every prior attempt. Such a process would not teach mastery, but ensure perpetual struggle. There is, however, another layer still, the possibility that awakening to the nature of the trap is itself the first step toward liberation. Like a dreamer who becomes lucid within the dream, recognizing the patterns and falsehoods for what they are, so too might the soul awaken within the machinery of reincarnation. And in that awakening, a choice emerges whether to step once more into the stream of recycling or to step away from it entirely. This exploration is not merely academic or mystical. It carries a weight that touches the most personal depths of our existence. For if the soul trap is real, then every loss we have endured, every joy we have cherished, every fear that has chased us in the dark, all belong to a stage set upon which we are compelled to play roles, life after life, under unseen direction. And yet, in recognizing the play, we may find the courage to improvise, to act with awareness rather than compulsion, and perhaps to leave the stage altogether. In entering this journey together, we are not seeking to dismiss life's beauty or to reduce its meaning, but to sharpen our vision so that we may see its hidden scaffolding. We will traverse the core themes of the soul trap, unravel its symbolic narratives, and ultimately bring its lessons into the fabric of our lived reality. Whether you approach with skepticism, curiosity, or quiet resonance, let the words unfold, like a map not dictating where you must walk, but offering trails long obscured by the fog of forgetting. For now, in this introduction, let us sit with the weight of the possibility that what you call your life is one iteration of thousands, and that the patterns repeating around you are not random but woven by design. Perhaps you have felt déjà vu, not as a fleeting glitch, but as a whisper from prior lives, threads of memory piercing the veil. Perhaps your soul aches not simply from this life's burdens, but from centuries of carrying roles you no longer remember. And perhaps, just perhaps, in uncovering the architecture of the trap, you might also discover the key that was hidden in your hands all along. To understand the soul trap, we must move beyond surface impressions and into the deeper patterns that seem to underpin this phenomenon. Imagine for a moment that existence itself is a vast theater, with each life you live being a different role, a different costume, a different script. Yet behind the curtain, the same machinery turns, the same hands shuffle the props, the same invisible director whispers lines into your subconscious. This theater feels infinite because the scenery constantly changes, but its stage is circular, looping you through the same performance, again and again, until you no longer remember that you were once both actor and audience. The first theme is the cycle itself, what ancient traditions have called the wheel of souls. On the surface, it appears as a mechanism of growth, where souls learn lessons through repeated incarnations, but the very structure raises unsettling questions. If the purpose of multiple lifetimes is growth, why then the amnesia? Why does each return wipe the slate clean, so that hard-won wisdom is lost to forgetfulness? True growth requires continuity, memory, and integration, yet the system, as it is presented, denies us this continuity, forcing us to stumble in the dark, repeating patterns without recognition, like mice in a maze who cannot recall the last escape attempt. This suggests not a benevolent school but something closer to a containment field, a design that ensures participation rather than liberation. Another core theme lies in illusion itself. The soul trap is said to rely upon a series of deceptions that convince us, at the moment of death, to willingly return. The most common image is that of the light, a radiant portal beckoning us to step forward, promising reunion with loved ones, divine comfort, or a final homecoming. Yet, if this light is not liberation but lure, then we are like moths drawn to a flame, captivated by beauty yet consumed by the fire that awaits. To recognize illusion is not to dismiss the emotions it evokes, but to question who benefits from our surrender, who stands behind the light, who orchestrates the visions that appear to the dying soul. If it was simply the universe inviting us home, why the compulsion to return rather than the freedom to depart? Here emerges the third theme, harvesting. Many traditions, both ancient and modern, hint at a reality in which human emotions, especially those rooted in fear, grief, and suffering, generate a kind of energetic sustenance. If so, then the recycling of souls ensures a steady harvest, with each life producing its crop of pain, hope, struggle, and fleeting joy. In this view, we are not merely learning, but being farmed, our essence consumed by forces that remain hidden from ordinary perception. This theme is perhaps the darkest, for it reframes existence itself, not as a school, nor even as a neutral cycle, but as a system designed for extraction. And yet, acknowledging this possibility forces us to sharpen our awareness, to reclaim our agency even in the face of manipulation. Closely linked to harvesting is the theme of consent, for the trap cannot function without the soul's agreement, however unconscious that agreement may be. This is the paradox. Though deceived, we still choose to step into the light, still agree to return, still contract ourselves into another cycle. Our consent is manufactured, shaped by illusions of love, duty, or fear of the unknown. In this way, the trap respects the law of free will in appearance, while violating its spirit through deception. It is like signing a contract written in invisible ink, never realizing the terms until it is too late. To awaken to the soul trap, then, is to withdraw this unconscious consent, to refuse the binding illusions, and to seek a freedom that lies beyond both fear and comfort. The final theme is liberation. If there is indeed a trap, then there must also be a way out. Liberation requires seeing through the illusions, remembering that you are not the roles you play, but the consciousness that observes them. It means recognizing the bait for what it is, and choosing, in the moment of transition, not to step into the light, but to step into the unknown, the unlit, the vast beyond. Ancient mystics spoke of turning away from the false light, of carrying awareness through death, of reclaiming the sovereignty of the soul. Liberation is not an easy theme, for it asks us to confront the deepest conditioning of trust, comfort, and longing. It asks us to imagine that freedom may not look like blissful reunions or radiant heavens, but like stepping into a silence so pure that even illusion cannot follow. All these themes intertwine: the endless cycle, the illusions that bind us, the harvesting of our energy, the manipulation of consent, and the possibility of liberation. Together, they form a tapestry that demands not blind belief, but courageous inquiry. Whether one accepts the soul trap literally, symbolically, or as a mirror of psychological patterns, it cannot be denied that life as we know it bears the marks of repetition, deception, and unseen architecture. The real question is whether we continue to move along the grooves carved for us, or whether we begin to carve new ones with the chisel of awareness. And so we stand at the threshold. To see the soul trap clearly is to begin questioning not only what happens after death, but what we are living for right now. If the trap thrives on our unawareness, then awareness itself is resistance. If the cycle feeds upon unconscious emotion, then conscious choice becomes the key. The deeper we explore, the more we may uncover not only about the structure of this strange system, but also about the hidden strength that has always lived within the soul, strength enough to refuse, to remember, and perhaps to finally step free. To enter the heart of the soul trap is to step into a realm where truth often arrives cloaked in story, where symbols speak louder than doctrines, and where allegory carries what plain language cannot. Throughout history, humanity has carried these stories like lanterns in the dark, metaphors, myths, and parables that point toward hidden architectures of reality. When examined closely, many of these symbolic narratives seem less like fantasy and more like coded memory, faint echoes of an ancient awareness of the cycle we have forgotten. One such symbol is the wheel itself. Across cultures, the wheel has appeared as both sacred and sinister. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, the wheel of samsara spins endlessly, carrying beings through cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. Its spokes represent the different realms of existence, from heavenly to hellish, and its hub is desire itself. Forever turning the mechanism to look upon this image is to see not a ladder toward freedom, but a circle, without beginning and without end. It is no coincidence that the wheel is also an ancient tool of bondage, once used to break prisoners, once used as a rack to stretch bodies beyond their limits. The wheel in its sacred form promises continuity. In its darker form, it whispers of imprisonment. Both meanings collapse into one when we view reincarnation not as growth, but as recycling. Another symbolic narrative lies in the figure of the spider and its web. Countless mythologies speak of spiders as weavers of fate, spinners of destiny, crafters of invisible nets. In this context, the soul trap may be envisioned as a cosmic web, strands so delicate they seem invisible, yet strong enough to hold even the most radiant of souls. Each choice, each attachment, each unhealed wound becomes a sticky thread, pulling us deeper into the design. The web is not overtly hostile, it glitters in the sun. It entices with beauty, but once entangled, the soul finds escape almost impossible without tearing itself apart. The spider itself, whether seen as deity, demon, or system, remains unseen. At the web center, feeding quietly on the vitality caught in its threads, there is also the myth of the labyrinth. In Greek lore, the labyrinth of Crete housed a minotaur, a beast who fed upon the lives sent into its winding holes. To escape required both cunning and a thread of memory, the thread of Ariadne, which guided Theseus back from the maze. The labyrinth mirrors the soul's entrapment, an intricate, confusing design of experiences, lifetimes, and illusions. Many enter, few remember the way out. The key, as the story tells us, is the thread, continuity of awareness, the remembrance that persists even as walls twist and shadows lengthen. Without memory, the maze becomes inescapable. With memory, even the most complex trap can be navigated. Stories of the afterlife also conceal symbolic warnings. Ancient Egyptian texts describe the weighing of the heart against the feather of mat, where the soul must stand trial before gods. The Christian tradition speaks of judgment, where the soul is sorted for heaven or hell. Across cultures, luminous beings greet the dead, guiding them toward new realms. Yet beneath these stories runs a common current. The soul is rarely left alone to choose. Instead, it is tested, judged, lured, or led. Rarely is liberation depicted as a simple stepping beyond the cycle, as if such a choice must be hidden behind trials and veils. In this, we may glimpse the symbolic fingerprint of the trap. The soul is conditioned to expect an authority figure, a judgment, a guiding light. To refuse these figures is heresy in many traditions, yet perhaps it is refusal, not obedience, that opens the way out. Dreams themselves offer another allegory. In dreams, we often wander through strange realities, convinced of their truth, until the moment of waking. We laugh, we fear, we suffer, we love, all within illusions so convincing that only in hindsight do we recognize their unreality. What if life itself is a dream of this kind? What if the soul trap functions precisely because we do not realize we are dreaming? Just as a lucid dreamer can awaken within the dream and take control, so too might the soul awaken within the cycle of reincarnation. Dreams teach us that reality need not be as solid as it appears, and that awakening is always closer than we think. Then there are the myths of the false paradise, tales of enchanted lands where wanderers are lulled into sleep, forgetting their origins and losing track of time, are found in Celtic lore, Norse sagas, and countless folk traditions. The pattern is the same. The beautiful realm appears, offering joy and rest, but those who partake find themselves trapped, unable to return, or awakening centuries later to a world unrecognizable. These stories may be echoes of the soul's journey. After death, visions of bliss and reunion offered as bait. The paradise is pleasant, but it is not freedom. It is gilded captivity, another chamber within the larger prison. All these symbolic narratives converge to remind us that freedom requires discernment. The wheel spins because we do not see its circularity. The web ensnares because we mistake its glitter for beauty. The labyrinth confuses because we forget the thread. The judgment persuades because we fear standing alone. The dream deceives because we do not realize we are dreaming. The paradise entices because we long for comfort more than truth. Each story is a mirror held up to the soul, asking us to remember what lies beyond appearances. The great power of symbols is that they bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the deeper self. When you encounter the image of a wheel, a web, a labyrinth, or a dream, something within you stirs, as if you have seen it before, and perhaps you have. Perhaps these symbols are not inventions but memories, fragments of recognition leaking through the veil of forgetfulness. To honor them is not to worship the symbols themselves, but to let them remind you of the deeper reality they point toward, that the soul is caught, that the trap is real, and that awareness is the thread leading out. To explore the soul trap as a philosophical or cosmic concept is one thing. To live with its implications in daily life is another. For if there is even a grain of truth to the notion that our existence is shaped by unseen cycles of recycling, then every moment we live becomes charged with new meaning. It is not simply a question of what happens after death, but how we live before it, and whether our lives are unconsciously feeding the very system that ensnares us. The first way this understanding integrates into life is through awareness. Awareness is more than mere observation. It is a piercing clarity, a refusal to accept appearances at face value. If the trap functions through illusion, then awareness is the counterforce, the light that dissolves false lights. In everyday life, this means questioning what we are told to value, what we are taught to fear, and what we are pressured to pursue. Much of modern society thrives on distraction and consumption, encouraging us to pour our energy into endless striving and emotional turmoil. If the trap feeds on energy, then to live consciously is to starve its machinery of unconscious nourishment. By refusing to be manipulated by fear, anger, or blind desire, we begin to reclaim our sovereignty. This does not mean withdrawing from life or denying its beauty. On the contrary, it means engaging with life more deeply, but from a place of choice rather than compulsion. Consider relationships. For example, many of us enter them driven by unconscious wounds. old patterns repeating themselves in cycles that feel strangely familiar. These cycles mirror the larger recycling of the soul. We play the same roles, encounter the same lessons, and forget what we have endured before. To integrate awareness of the trap into relationships is to notice these patterns, to stop rehearsing the same old dramas, and to choose love or separation consciously, rather than being dragged by the invisible current of repetition. Another practical implication lies in the cultivation of memory, not just memory of this life, but the deeper memory that lives in intuition and resonance. While we cannot recall every past incarnation with precision, we can attune ourselves to the faint whispers of recognition, the déjà vu that arises in new places, the inexplicable comfort or discomfort we feel towards strangers, the unshakable sense that certain patterns are older than this lifetime. To honor these whispers is to stitch together the thread of Ariadne, the thread of awareness that leads through the labyrinth. Practices such as meditation, dream work, and introspection sharpen this inner memory, reminding us that the soul has roots far deeper than the present body. Integration also requires discernment at the threshold moments of life and death. While we may not yet stand at the brink of death, how we prepare in life determines the clarity we carry across that threshold. Many traditions teach the importance of preparing for death, not through fear, but through familiarity, learning to remain conscious in states of transition, whether through meditation, lucid dreaming, or deep states of inner silence. In life, this translates into the habit of choosing awareness over autopilot, presence over distraction. If death is another transition filled with illusions, then the habit of awareness cultivated now becomes the shield against deception later. Beyond the personal, the implications extend into how we view society itself. If the soul trap thrives on unconscious energy, then systems of power may be designed to perpetuate that unconsciousness. War, division, consumerism, and fear-driven media all keep humanity in states of emotional volatility, ensuring the constant generation of harvestable energy. To integrate awareness into society is to see through these manipulations, to refuse to give our energy freely to cycles of anger and despair. This does not mean passivity, it means responding consciously, refusing to be baited into reactions that fuel the very forces that benefit from our unrest. Perhaps the most profound integration is the cultivation of inner sovereignty. To live as though the soul trap exists is to refuse to surrender one's essence to any authority, whether spiritual, political, or psychological. It means recognizing that the ultimate responsibility for freedom lies within the individual soul. Liberation cannot be granted by another, nor bought, nor bargained for. It must be chosen, moment by moment, until the very act of living becomes an expression of freedom rather than entrapment. This sovereignty is not isolation. It is the freedom to love without attachment, to act without compulsion, to live without fear of death, because death itself is seen through. And finally, practical integration requires courage. To even entertain the possibility of the soul trap is to unsettle the deepest comforts humanity has held, that death brings rest, that the light is always safe, that our struggles serve some higher benevolence. To question these assumptions demands bravery, for it strips away the comforting narratives and leaves us standing before the unknown. But it is in that unknown, that vast, uncharted silence, where true freedom may lie. Courage in daily life means practicing this stance, turning toward discomfort, questioning illusions, and stepping willingly into uncertainty when truth demands it. In this way, the philosophy of the soul trap ceases to be abstract and becomes a living compass. It asks us to notice where in our lives we are repeating cycles unconsciously. It challenges us to reclaim memory, to cultivate awareness, to resist manipulation, and to live from sovereignty, whether or not one takes the soul trap literally. Its symbolic power is undeniable. It reveals the structures of illusion that bind not only the soul after death, but also the mind during life. To live with this awareness is to begin loosening the chains, one link at a time, so that when the final moment comes, we may step not into the light of deception, but into the freedom that waits beyond. There comes a point in every great inquiry where the threads, once scattered, begin to weave themselves into a tapestry. We have walked through suspicion and symbol, through the wheel of repetition and the webs of illusion, through the practicalities of living with such awareness. And now we arrive at the threshold of meaning. For what is the purpose of contemplating the soul trap, if not to arrive at transformation, not merely of thought, but of being. The soul trap, whether taken as literal reality, metaphor, or symbolic teaching, confronts us with a choice: to remain passive within the cycles we are given, or to awaken to the possibility of freedom beyond them. At its core, the narrative is not about fear but about sovereignty. It is not meant to paralyze us with despair, but to rouse us from complacency. To realize that perhaps you have walked this earth 1,000 times before is not an indictment of futility, it is a reminder of resilience. You have endured storms, heartbreaks, empires rising and falling, the weight of centuries, and still, you are here. But the deeper invitation is to ask, do you wish to continue endlessly, or do you wish to step beyond? The first step toward liberation is recognition. Just as a dreamer cannot awaken until they know they are dreaming, so too can the soul not escape until it perceives the trap. This recognition shifts the ground beneath our feet. Suddenly, the struggles of life, though still heavy, are no longer interpreted as mere punishment or random cruelty. They are understood as part of a design, and in seeing the design, its power diminishes. Awareness is the crack in the wall through which light pours, not the false light of illusion, but the clear, steady light of consciousness itself. The second step is refusal. Refusal to surrender to appearances without discernment. Refusal to give consent unconsciously. Refusal to play the same roles out of habit rather than choice. Refusal does not mean nihilism or rejection of life. It means embracing life on one's own terms, free of manipulation. It means living in such a way that when the moment of death arrives, the soul does not wander blindly into the next cycle but pauses, remembers, and chooses differently. This refusal is an act of courage, for it requires stepping away from the comforting promises of reunion and paradise, choosing instead the mystery of the uncharted. And the final step is surrendered, but not to the trap. It is the surrender to the deeper self, the eternal consciousness that has been obscured by lifetimes of forgetfulness. This surrender is not about loss, but about remembering. It is the letting go of attachments, identities, fears, and desires that tether the soul to the wheel. It is the recognition that what we truly are does not need recycling, does not require lessons repeated endlessly, does not hunger for the illusions of light, but simply is vast, timeless, unbound. From this vantage point, the entire architecture of the soul trap appears less like a prison and more like a stage set, imposing while you are within it, yet fragile once you step outside. The set collapses when you refuse to play the role, when you step off the stage altogether. On what waits beyond, no one can say with certainty. That is the great terror and the great hope. Perhaps it is silence, perhaps it is a realm so vast and unconditioned that no words can reach it. But whatever it is, it will be yours, not given by gods, not dictated by systems, not recycled by forces unseen, but chosen by the sovereign spark of awareness that has always lived within you. And so, the transformational call is this: live as though you are already free. Let every day be a rehearsal, not for another life, but for liberation. Practice awareness in the smallest of acts: breathing, walking, speaking, until awareness becomes your natural state. Notice the patterns that repeat and choose whether to continue them or to break them. Question the illusions of authority, comfort, and fear that seek to bind your consent. When dreams speak to you, listen. When intuition whispers, follow. And when the time comes to step into the unknown, remember that you have already practiced freedom in every breath, every choice, every act of courage. You are not merely a soul caught in a trap. You are the trap's witness, the one who can see through its veils. And in seeing through, you hold the power to step beyond. The cycle may have claimed you for thousands of years, but eternity stretches wider still, waiting for you to claim it. Key has never been elsewhere, it has always been in your own awareness, hidden not in the hands of guards or systems, but in the still, luminous core of your being. The journey then does not end here, it begins. For now, you carry not only the suspicion of entrapment, but the possibility of release. And that possibility is everything.